most people know that Buffalo black male graduation rate is, and Hispanic males, it's about 25%, 75% dropout rate. That's the same for the ELL students. For the white males, it's not as much better. It's about 55% graduation rate. But overall, it's about a 57% graduation rate. And we have some serious work to do in terms of dealing with the structural issues that are causing our children not to succeed. There's going to be a big issue happening over the next month or so as it relates, by April 30th really, as it relates to our children in our persistently low performing schools, the schools that are talked about here. And that if we as parents don't weigh in, if we don't really shift the balance of power about how this decision is made, there's going to be a fight between the teachers union and the administration about what happens to our children, and nobody has talked to us.
Folks have been waiting for somebody to step out there and take this bold step. It's going to happen. Let me reintroduce again Dr. Nathan Hare, the CEO of Community Action Organization, who is going to speak for 5 minutes or less.
The best we can. So because we have such short time, we're going to try to give you a little bit of background. And my objective here is to help us to rethink, to change our paradigm about how we're thinking about how we get our communities under our control by bringing the schools back under our control. There are 31 school districts in Erie County. 30 of them, the schools are open until the parents, teachers, people in the community, and the kids get done using it. The only school district in Erie County that is closed to the students at 3 o'clock, closed to everyone on earth at 4 o'clock, is the Buffalo Public School District, which historically has had the worst outcomes of every school district in the entire county. I think that's a clue. Number one. Schools used to be, when I was growing up, the principal integrator of a community. I don't mean racial integration. I mean Mr. Austin, who taught at East High School. I'm talking about the police officer down the street. I'm talking about the Bethlehem steel worker. I'm talking about the woman that was on public assistance, the man who was disabled. I'm talking about my grandmother. I'm talking about living on Glenwood, on Humboldt Parkway. I'm talking about people who were brought together. The parenting and non-parenting adults in the community were integrated with each other around the schools. Your older sister went to that school, your father went to that school, your uncle went to that school. When you went to that school, the entire school was waiting on you because they knew you were coming. School 53, those that remember School 53, you know, when you got there were 30 or 40 teachers who had taught your siblings, right? And who knew you were coming. They were waiting on you at the door. Told you about your older brothers and sisters, how they acted and how you better act. But that doesn't happen anymore. We killed that because somebody sold us a bill of goods. Somebody said when people like me, maybe a little bit too aggressively, asked that if you're going to spend $2,800 in 1963 in a majority Caucasian school, then you got to spend $2,800 per student at School 53 or at School 4. That wasn't the deal at that time. I only asked that the money be made right, and if the child lived on Red Jacket in Seneca, that you allow that child to go to school on Red Jacket in Seneca. That's the only integration that we asked for. But they gave us forced busing and magnet schools, and they destroyed 22 of the schools that we had that were in primarily African school districts, so that we don't even have neighborhood schools in many of the neighborhoods. School. That's the craziness of how we've allowed ourselves to become organized. What I'm saying to you is if you read the literature, schools that are what they call walkable schools, where people can walk to the school, is the new paradigm. How do we create walkable schools? You create walkable schools by eliminating as much forced busing as you possibly can. Turn these schools back into neighborhood schools. Put citizens in responsible relationships with these schools. Turn the schools into places, if you take the money that we spend on forced busing. We spend $52 or so million in this district just on busing. Think about what the so-called gains were supposed to be with this forced integration. The money was supposed to follow the Caucasian kids to the school. Everything was supposed to get nice. Resources were going to follow. All that stuff was supposed to happen. Schools were going to get better. Everything was going to be just great. We've been doing this for 37 years. Is it great? No. You don't need a study for this. Let me go a little bit further. I know I got 30 seconds. They always tell us that we need to do these things incrementally. They didn't desegregate and start that forced busing incrementally. They did it to everybody all at one time. We need to take this thing apart, go back to neighborhood schools. The money that we save can go into a 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock after-school program in every school, the toughest time. It's prime time for kids. It's 3 o'clock until 8 o'clock. We already have the money.
That's right.
We don't need anybody's permission. And if there's a contract that says that we cannot rule what happens inside our schools, that contract is invalid. We must fight to bring this back under our control.
I read in the paper last week that Buffalo spends, I think, in excess of $20,000 per child. Is it 22?
Yeah,
okay.
That's fake. It's really 26.
$26,000 per child. You know what? One of the things I used to ask when I was really involved, when my kids were smaller in school, was for somebody to break down that dollar amount for me. So I want to know exactly how that it wasn't $26,000 when my kids were in school, believe me, but whatever the dollar amount is. Just think, would you ever think about asking that question? Break that 20. I want to see, because I think for $26,000, you maybe can get a lot more somewhere else. Again, free public education. Think about that. How many of you folks practice school choice or have taken advantage of the school choice provision in No Child Left Behind? One. What's the? A couple. Do you know that in part of No Child Left Behind, it offers school choice if the school that your children are attending presently does not meet its targets for 2 consecutive years, and there's another piece. But anyway, what it allows you to do is to take your children out of that school and put them into a higher performing school. And it's been on the books, guys, since 2002. I don't know where you all been, but when my kids were small, without legislation, I practiced school choice. My kids went to the school, we had 4. They went to the schools I wanted them, and not only to the schools I wanted them to go, they had the teachers I wanted them to have. Okay? That was school choice, but it was something that I did. But it's in the law. You have a legislative right, if your children are currently attending a low-performing school, to petition the district. And they're going to tell you no. Okay? They're going to tell you no. They're trained and conditioned to tell you no, but you don't have to accept it. And if the other provision, supplemental education service. Anybody have their kids go to supplementary education services? After school programs been in effect, part of No Child Left Behind. There's several. Does the CAO offer it? Yes. But I think the last I remember, it was less than 15% of the students that were eligible were participating in SES. That's a couple of years ago, but less than 15%. And you know where the money is going? If it's not spent, it just goes back into a general fund.
The superintendent of schools told us all that the structure of New York State schools is designed to cause kids to drop out of school. Now, it don't matter, at the end of the day, it don't matter whether we agree with that or not. What matters is that the person that we pay the most to know the answer to that question came out and said to us, we can keep sending our kids to school. We have a 75% dropout rate for Black, Hispanic, and ELL males in particular. And we've had it all this time. And the person who's best able to know if it's going to get better has said what? It's not designed to get better. The bottom line is we have some choices to make as parents. Because the reality is the superintendent, and I think we should rally to the point he's making. He's making the point that the structure of education does not work. So the question is, as parents, if the superintendent's lead has said that this is not going to work, what are we going to do? I mean, so that's really what the question becomes. What we want to do tonight, we were going to give our parents a last chance to make a closing comment, but then what we want to do is we want to have a discussion as parents, as elected representatives of our school, about some stuff that we can do so that we don't continue to participate in something we know that the people in charge say is not going to work. The people in charge say it's not going to work. So if you ain't one of the lucky ones, you know, you can just count on it. It's almost predictable what's going to happen. And so unless we stand up and do something right now, what we do is we plan for another generation of our children to end up in jail, dead, 55% unemployment rate. And the only, listen to this is the bottom line as we go to these speakers. The only people that can possibly change it, is there any possibility that the school board is going to vote to change itself?
Hell no.
Is there any possibility that a secure teaching corps is going to change itself?
No.
Is there any possibility that the administration is going to change itself? No. So if it's going to change, who are the only people who can possibly change it? Yes. And so tonight, we got to make a decision. Whether we're going to continue to participate in something that we know ain't going to work, or we're going to come to terms and make some hard decisions about how we're going to move forward.
Do not get confused about who pays what property taxes. It's all taxes that pays for your Buffalo Public School District. Whether it's sales taxes, property taxes, income taxes, you are paying for it. It is your school. You own the school. The resources are in the school right now. If you take $35,000 and divide it into $900 million, that's $26,000 per child. If you want to do right by me, give me the money. I'll hire somebody for $13,000 a head to take care of your kids. I put the $13,000 in my pocket. This is insane, what we are allowing to occur. Now, I'll talk about the desegregation thing. If the model that I'm talking about, going back to neighborhood schools, somehow impeaches in your mind what happens with school or racial isolation, for $900 million, somebody in this district better figure it out. I should not be asked to figure that out for you. We should be able to do this for ourselves. These are your dollars, these are your buildings, and the superintendent and every one of the people that work in these buildings works for you. You cannot allow people that work for you tell you how they get to work for you. You tell them how they work for you.
To build off what Sam was saying, there are a lot of people are going to make excuses, and they're going to make excuses every which way, and they're not going to take responsibility. But it's a really, really simple solution. I mean, we put the students first, we make sure good people are in leadership, and we hold them accountable for making sure that our kids are educated. And there are a lot of problems that we're going to blame. We're going to blame poverty and crime and the homes that these kids go home to and lack of parent engagement. But there are things that are out of our control, and then there's something that we're putting a ton of money towards, and that's public education. So if we have it and we do it, we should be able to do it to the best that we possibly can. It's working in places across the country. There's no reason it can't work here. So keep on pounding down the door. Tell them that you're there. They always blame parents for not being engaged. They clearly are.
There's nothing more important than what's going on with our children and our education system. Last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, we reported before the Buffalo Common Council in an effort to do some things. We wanted to be able to have the right to vote as taxpayers, on the right to vote on our budget. We wanted to have the council to, before they approved the $70 million that go to the school district every year, we wanted to make sure that they gave us as citizens the right to ask questions. They had a hearing before they gave that money away. We also wanted them to ensure that we had 2 full-time with benefits, paid parent facilitators in every school. We wanted them to, you get a clap for that?